Well, the December 18th BNS, or now I suppose back to BNR, it looks like, has dropped, and we have changes to Blitz, Commoner, and the much questioned will they, won't they answer to what they're going to do for the LL format. So let's run it down, look at some very interesting and exciting changes, to say the least. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando, and go again, a fabulous cast. Thanks for checking in for this Sunday evening for me. It's actually still technically the 17th, at least where I am, but that's right, it's the 18th in other parts of the world, and that means we have the scheduled December 18th BNR announcement. Whatever we want to call it now. Scheduled, banned, and restricted is actually what it's called. So there you go, BNR. And let's cover this. So there's some interesting stuff going on here. It's actually some pretty exciting stuff from where I stand. Those of you who know follow the channel, I should say, you know, I'm big on Commoner. I think it's a great learning tool. There's changes involved in that. And I actually want to start this conversation going all the way down to the bottom. I think that's actually the best place to start. So there's two things here. First is the end of suspensions. You see that there? With this update, we're officially discontinuing the use of suspended category. Came during a formative time, blah, 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 and instead they're going to use banned and restricted. It is our intention to ban or unban a card. Okay, so this is a big statement here. Now, we have seen the unbanning of a card like Drone, right? We saw that in the beginning of Skirmish Season 7, so I want to say like July timeframe-ish. We saw Drone get unbanned for a brief period of time. The other card we've seen become unbanned, well, we've seen other cards become unbanned, I believe. But the other one that became unbanned more recently was the Bullseye's Bracers. But that was not quite like that was more of like a walk back, not really like an unban, right? They were like, yeah, we went too far on that one. So, you know, I don't think that really counts. I mean, it's technically an unban because it was banned and it was unbanned, but in the grand scheme of things, that's more of a walk back instead of an actual unban. So why I think this is important is if it is our intention to ban or unban a card only until a card reaches Living Legend as a contingent experiment, blah, 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 we will disseminate that information in the announcement of that card's banning. So, whereas before we'd be like, this is suspended until this hero goes away. Now it's just banned, but we'll say we can bring it back. And I personally think that's very interesting. Again, if you've been on this channel for a while following it, you know that I think that once they ban something, it should stay banned. But that's not the way other card games do it. That said, Flesh and Blood's its own game. So, I mean, again, it's neither here nor there. It is here nor there, but what's legal is legal, and that's fine. The only reason I know we're going a little off topic here, but the primary reason I don't like the concept of unbanning something is that if a card is banned for a long period of time, the design team designs around it not being there. So bringing something back, I think, is a big deal, right? And that's why I was very anti-Drone being unbanned, because it had been the game had been developed for multiple sets with that card not in the meta. Whereas like Bullseye's Bracers was, I don't remember how many months, but it was only a handful of months for that one. So that was like not impactful to the design thing. So anyway, again, we have a lot of faith in LSS to push that and control that. But it is a concern, right? Because if you're going through the design phase and something's not legal and then suddenly you bring it back later. Now, do I think that's necessarily going to be an issue for like Blitz and CC? No, I do not. But I do think it could be very, very, very relevant for like the Living Legend format, right? So again, completely different vehicle there. We'll see how they handle it. But I do think it's relevant to kind of know. Right, next into the next BNS announcement is Monday, March 25th, right? So we will completely see, right, this is what we're writing through the next set. I mean, that's 3 months from now. Okay. It's almost, well, it's 3 months and a week from now. Okay. All right, so CC, no changes. I think that comes as a surprise to basically nobody. It seems pretty wide open right now. Like the last Battle Hardens, we've had different winners every weekend, and I don't think any surprise there. Very healthy meta, I would think. Depending on if you like it or not, that's your prerogative. But I think for certain, we've got a healthy meta now, or at least a diverse meta now. Plus, again, going into the lull of the competitive season into heavy hitters dropping makes complete sense. Blitz, a lot of this is from ban to legal. Previously, I believe they were suspended, I think is what they were classified as. I should have done my homework on that. But either way, they were gone, and now that Kano's back, they're back. The one that is not back is Snapback. There's a good explanation there of that with Emperor. I was actually toying around with that in an Emperor deck the other day until I realized that until I remembered that Snapback was banned because I forgot about it with Kano. So I think that they're exactly right on there. It's really, I mean, it makes sense. And then the very interesting thing about this is there's been a lot of conversation about Cintauri Sabers and Kassai. So the Cintauri Sabers have come back, tied to Kassai, not Kassai Cintauri Sellsword, because she's gone, but now tied to young Kassai, who is tied to Golden Sands Kassai Adult. So those are her weapons, which implies that it doesn't mean we won't get another weapon in heavy hitters. I would imagine we actually get a couple weapons in heavy hitters. But it does mean that Kassai, new Kassai, is primarily built around the Sabers, which is very interesting. And I also think it's really good I think it's hugely good because the Warriors lost quite a bit in terms of like alternate play styles when those went away. So I think that's super awesome. Super awesome. All right, now let's move into Living Legend. So it's funny, I was this morning, the day I'm shooting this, I was on Riddlerman's channel, right? Riddlerman Gaming. I'll link there, and we were talking kind of Living Legend at one point in that hour and a half chat. It was a long chat. Don't go looking for this specific thing, but we were talking about Living Legend and kind of that whole thing. So here's where I think the change in the B and R and S and all that is really originating from is Living Legend. So Awakening's restricted. Well, let's just read the ones that are restricted. Awakening, Channel Lake, Crippling Crush. Crippling Crush is interesting, but it makes sense with Starvo, but sorry, Bravo. But I mean, let's just finish the list. Hypothermia, Oakenold, Starstruck, and then Warmongers. Okay, so as I mentioned, sorry, Bravo, but I do think that really puts that whole format itself into perspective, right? That they're basically, I mean, this is kind of basically acknowledging that Starvo is just going to forever be better than Bravo, right? I mean, I think that's fair. So, and that's not a problem. It is what it is, right? We've got this like D-ramp power thing going on right now, and the heroes that were high, I think, are going to continue to be high for a long time until folks can figure out some way to innovate. So I don't want to spend a ton of time there. I know there's a lot of folks passionate about Living Legend, and they can do, their videos. I think the format is what it is, but it's not the formats that I'm interested in. Right, last to close, and you betcha, we're going to be having a video on this and the implications of this. But Commoner. So 2 changes there. Amulet of Ice is banned and Stubby Hammerers is banned. Both of these make 100% complete sense because guess what? They're banned in the other formats. And it's just like the cards just have too much fundamental value. So Stubbies was very popular with Fi and Chane. Makes sense. So it really stops those go wides. It was really gross. I mean, Fi obviously it was really good with because he just naturally can do that, but it was also really gross on some pop-off turns from Chane because Bounding Demagon always classifies as it and gets the +1 when it comes from Banish Zone. So like that was really nasty. And also the like Riftbind, they all have base 3. So Chane going off on a Chane turn with the go agains and all that. It could get very gross, right? And then Amulet of Ice obviously does Amulet of Ice things. So these 2 changes I think are very good. You look at, so part of the reason Fi was probably the big boy in the room in the commoner format across the globe until Worlds, when I think it was 5 Icelanders in the top 8. Maybe it was only 4, but either way, Icelander was significantly represented in the top 8 at the primary commoner event at Worlds. which did not surprise me. If you'd been following the commenter content, I was like, I think Icelander's better than people are giving her credit for. She is. And Amulet of Ice is a double hit to her, not only just because of it doing its thing, but it's also another ice card. Remember, in commoner, she's more limited. So she loses a fuse card. She loses a blue, ice, fuse card, which, yes, is only one card, but triple impact. So it's a big loss there. And then obviously with the pop-up turns for stubbies. So this is really cool. And do keep in mind, she still has Aether Ice Vein, right? Aether Ice Vein's pretty gross, because when fused, if you're not running AB5, you're basically losing a card on that. And for minimal effort, because they can do it and then tuck the card they fused with, in theory, right? So she has plenty of ammunition still. Fi is no joke, because the new mask that came out in the RTT around the table is three hits non-consecutive, and that's card draw, which is pretty massive. So I don't think these hamstring those heroes, I mean, it slows them down, but I don't think this stops those heroes from being relevant at all. And Chane is still very good, and can do shrills and all that stuff. So seems pretty decent in commoner. We can go back and maybe evaluate the new, well, that's what we will do later this week. We'll go back and reevaluate the new meta, and I've got a couple deck lists that I was waiting on this release for to make sure that they weren't going to become invalid. So we're going to have commoner content all the way through January, because they were not affected by these, which is pretty cool. So that's the take overall. I'm curious what your folks' thoughts are. Again, you know how I do this. I don't want to read it to you, because you all can read. You all have seen them at this point. But the impacts to commoner, I think, are pretty minor, but also significant at the same time, right? Kind of really just strings those two. Again, the stuff to Living Legend is fine. It is what it is. I just personally don't really care. It doesn't really. I'm not into that, so I'm not going to try and speak intelligently. I mean, there's zero question that Starvo's been. Didn't he put 8 in the top 8 at Worlds, and then he also won a recent one with in the final with both of them. I'm not saying other heroes can't do things, but the data is telling us that Starvo's pretty strong. Surprised face. But to close this out, I think this stuff's big. I mean, maybe not big, but significant, right? End of suspensions, changing that. So, I mean, if your card is banned, you should just... I mean, we're now using banned as a flex term. Officially, right? Which is fine. That's the way they want to do it. I personally disagree with it, but who cares, right? Functionally, it doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as it's in a pool that's legal or not. And then we'll circle back on this in March. So anyway, that'll do it for us. Happy Sunday evening for those in the US, or Monday morning, I suppose, for other parts of the world, but nothing else. Go Commando, folks.